Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining today's webinar. I'm Laura Milojevic, the Director of Marketing at SimpleFi Solutions. Today, we're excited to have our VP of Platform and Analytics, Eric Blondin, as he takes a deep dive into the SAP Datasphere versus BW and asks the question, is now the time to look into changing? When the webinar concludes, a short survey is going to appear. If you can please fill that out, we would really appreciate any and all feedback. And after the webinar, please also feel free to reach out to Eric or myself with any questions. And now I'll hand it over to Eric so we can get started.
Thank you, Lauren, and thank you everyone for attending this webinar this morning, and I think this afternoon for some of you. So before we go into the actual question about Datasphere versus BW, is it time to start thinking of going to Datasphere? I'll just want to give you a brief introduction as to who SimpleFi is and who I am as well, just so you know who you're talking to, watching right now. And then I'm going to go quickly as to what is Datasphere. I'm sure some people on this call have a very generic knowledge of what that is, so I'll be quickly just with a few slides from SAP explaining what that is, and then we'll jump into the actual subject. Okay, so first of all, SimpleFi. So SimpleFi, we're finance and analytics experts. So we're a small boutique firm specializing on planning, analytics, and consolidation solutions. So we're really focused on these technologies. Obviously, in the past few years now, we've been a go-to SAP partners for SAP Analytics Cloud. But as you may have heard, as you may have seen and read, Datasphere obviously integrates very efficiently into SAC. So this is just a natural sequence for us to get invested into Datasphere. Also, as a small boutique firm, it is our goal to have 100% references. We do not have the luxury of working on many projects and letting them go afterwards. So every customer we work with, our objective is that you're satisfied, and afterwards you're even willing to talk about your experience with us and start discussing with other potential customers about how this project went, and then go forward from there. We do business services around transformation. We design obviously a lot of SAP Analytics Cloud solutions, mostly around planning. We have built a lot of our business content. I will not talk about that content today, but if you've watched some of our webinars, you have heard about them. And if you haven't watched some of our previous webinars, I strongly encourage you to look at our YouTube channel. We talk a lot about our home-built business content based on years of experience from our team. So it's really a lot of value to accelerate your Analytics Cloud. And this is not something we sell. It is just an enabler to help you roll out SAP Analytics Cloud for your mainly planning requirements. We also work with expert as a service. So in some cases, you just need to figure out what's happening with your SAC environment, or you need support once we've actually implemented it. So clearly we're going to be there for you. And then project fixes. We've been involved on a lot of SAC planning projects that needed fixing, most of them not ours, and we've been gladly helping our customers fix that. Additionally, we do focus on other technologies outside SAP Analytics Cloud. Datasphere, obviously, that's today's discussion. PAPM, BPC. BPC is our historical focus. So obviously right now we do BPC support for some of our customers. Most of our team actually has strong BPC experience, but our focus is really on SAP Analytics Cloud, mostly on the planning side. Same thing for BW. We've done a lot of BW in the past, and actually that's the experience I'm going to be building on today for the presentation, but we do not do a lot of BW anymore. HANA, obviously, it's behind most of these things, and group reporting from a financial consolidation. Historically, BPC did planning consolidation. We do planning and consolidation in SAP Analytics Cloud, but from bigger consolidation requirements, we've actually gone through and implemented group reporting with quite a few of our customers. To support all of this, the business content, we've branded our content Planify. So when you see Planify, it's really all our SAC business content supporting FP&A, some line of business planning like sales and margin, some basic analytics, data modeling on CRM requirements, sales, financials, obviously, and then your financial statement consolidation. So all of this, if there's really some interest in SAC planning, which is not today's subject, do go and look some of our previous webinars. You'll find a lot of information there. And then we bring a lot of value, automating, increasing visibility for some of your KPIs. The objective is always to reduce overhead and obviously shorten planning cycles. Isn't that everyone's objective all the time? Our content has won quite a few awards over the years from SAP and elsewhere. So we're really proud of it, and we really feel it is a good accelerator. Now, that's pretty much all I was going to say on SAC today. Let's talk quickly about who I am. Most of you, I assume, do not know me. So I'm, as I was introduced, I'm a VP Platform and Technology at SimpleFi. My background, though, I've been in the BI and data warehousing world since over 20 years. Actually, I was looking at my resume recently, and I actually started in this field in 1988. That year, I did not start on the SAP side, though. I did not know anything about SAP, although I wasn't aware of it. But I started on Seagate Info in 1998, which was bought by a certain company called Crystal, which was bought by a certain company called Business Objects, which was then bought by a company called SAP. So I did start on SAP in 1998, but it wasn't the SAP we know today. More specifically, I started really in the SAP world in 2004 with my first net new BW rollout. So that was my learning experience on BW, first implementing BW. For people who have been around, that was BW 3.5 a little while ago, and great experience I got there. And over the next few years, I got certified on BW, always working on that same environment, optimizing it. I then moved in 2008. I moved to Europe for a few years, and I became SAP Education BW trainer for some specific courses. So if you took a BW course in Paris, so that could be fun. I was actually one of the trainers out there, and also I did a lot of projects while I was there. So over time, I've done over 50 BW projects, but all as a developer, BW architect, or project manager, depending on the kind of projects and when I did that between 2004 and today. My last net new BW rollout personally, okay, so that doesn't say anything about SAP rollouts, how many new BW rollouts there are or anything, but my last net new BW rollout was in 2019. That's at the time I really started to focus a lot on SAC. I said I wouldn't talk about it anymore, but I did get really focused on SAC starting in 2019. And also that's when I got my first look at SAP Data Warehouse Cloud. Started looking at it, trying to figure out what could be done with this. Obviously, SAP Data Warehouse Cloud, as it came out in 2019, and its rebranding this year in March, there's been a lot of evolutions, and that's why it kind of brought me to think, okay, so now people have been with BW for all those years, and I've been a very strong I'm missing the words here, but someone who was really strongly in favor of BW over the years. I've always been saying, if you have a big SAP landscape, BW is the best solution for you. And I've always looked at when BW is an issue, typically it's not BW itself, it's how it was implemented. BW is really a strong tool that integrates efficiently in SAP's landscape. And so I was always behind it. And for almost 20 years now, I was really backing up any BW rollouts as being the best solution if you have a big SAP landscape in your company. Obviously, things evolve, market evolves, the technologies around evolve, and whereas ECC in 2004, well, actually, I was on R3 in 2004. So R3, then ECC, were very kind of closed out as a system. So for integration, you needed SAP technologies. So that's where BW was really efficient. S4, as we move forward, and all the cloud solutions are getting closer to more standardized integrations. So maybe BW does not need to be that much at the forefront of all BI solutions. But there are still possibilities where BW can be very useful for you. BW is not going away. I was looking at the roadmap recently, and I may retire before BW goes away. So there's still a lot of life left in BW. So the question is not, I need to migrate very quickly before it disappears. That's not the case. You may still need to maintain and upgrade and everything, but BW for now is staying there for quite a while. So, but saying this, if you're thinking right now, should I move out of BW or should I implement BW? Maybe you do not have it. So let's talk quickly about what Datasphere is. I have 3 slides from SAP on this subject, and then we'll go to the BW integration parts before we actually discuss where should you go. So when we talk about SAP today in the cloud, we talk a lot about BTP, the SAP Business Technology Platform. If you've been on any SAP presentations in the past year or two, BTP is everywhere. We talk about BTP for just about everything. So development, automation, data integration, AI, a lot of things in there. And the advantage is once you have BTP, you can use different components and make them work together. The one we focus at SimpleFi, and the one obviously I'm focusing on right now, is in this data and analytics subject. Okay, so there's a lot of other things we have partners with whom we work that do a lot of these things, but really what I'm going to be focusing on today is data and analytics. Within data and analytics, you see database, data management, data warehouse, analytics, and planning. So analytics and planning, well, this is SAP Analytics Cloud. This is our bread and butter. We do projects day in, day out on these technologies, and we've been doing it for years now and very good results. So this is the subject of probably 90% of our webinars on our YouTube channel. At the other end of the spectrum, there's the operational database, pure database development. Again, I won't talk about that one too much today, but sometimes you need pure database development. It's not a data warehouse you need. It's just you need a table in which you do stuff around machine learning, around AI. So in this context, maybe you want to go and work really with an operational database. In the middle of those two, there's SAP Datasphere for data management, data warehouse. And here we see the title Business Data Fabric. That's actually a very popular word right now in the SAP world. And I'm saying in the SAP world, not only the SAP world. Business Data Fabric is a really trendy word in how you can integrate your data from multiple sources. But I'll get back to this later. Right now, let's focus on Datasphere itself. So Datasphere, okay, a bit, if you look at this, you're probably feeling, I've seen that before. Pretty much any data warehouse platform shows something similar to this. I'm actually going to bring out the old BW one in a few slides, so you'll recognize that at least slides have gotten nicer, but the basic idea remains the same. So the objective is always the same. As data warehousing tools have evolved, have improved, data integration has improved, all this has improved, but the basic challenge remains the same. We want to bring data from multiple sources. We want to have ways of sharing and controlling that information. We want to make it accessible in some cases to our partners and vendors for some requirements. And we want to be able to model it efficiently and then make it available for the business in a way they'll understand without needing to be a database expert. So what I've just said is pretty much what I've been saying since 2004. That hasn't changed. What changes obviously is technology, how everyone's understanding of it and everyone's experience on it improves, and obviously just the back-end technology. Doing cloud data warehousing in 2004, I think there were a lot of things that were still missing. Just network cards to connect to the internet would have found it. It was slow having a database server in the next room, so I can't imagine doing it in the cloud where your database server can be just about anywhere. So technology has evolved, helping us make this easier, but the basic requirement has always been make it easier and efficient for the business user to understand his data and take decisions based on that data. And this is what Datasphere still works at. And with all this experience brings it in a much more efficient way. And I'll get back to that later. Although today is not a Datasphere training specifically, but still, I'll bring a few comments as we move forward as to how a Datasphere can help. On top of this, we see analytics, predictive planning, apps. So obviously, in my case, we do a lot of SAC on top of Datasphere. Similarly to BW, for the ones who have that experience, there is business content. SAP is catching up right now on the Datasphere business content. You don't have even close to as much business content as there is in BW, but they're catching up. The idea is obviously, if you do a net new rollout of a data warehouse, you can start with that business content. It helps you with your models. And SimpleFi, similarly to what we've done with SAC, we're slowly working on building out this business content that will help some of the generic requirements some of our customers may need as you go forward. And catalog is just a way of making it simpler for everyone to find the information. So that being said about Datasphere, when we talk about BW or Datasphere, it's not always in this one or that one. There is a migration option that exists. It's a partial migration option, mind you, but it allows you to bring in a lot of the things you've built in BW directly to Datasphere without having to redo it all. There are limitations, and maybe it's not for you, but I just want to make sure everyone on this call understands what that is before we get to what should I do, okay? Because there's one thing. This is a technology. It's actually quite new. The SAP has been working on it over the past, well, probably more than the past year, but we've been seeing the results over the past year. So typically that means they've been working on it quite a while. So what does SAP BW Bridge do? It actually allows you to bring in your SAP BW models directly into your Datasphere environment. So these are still SAP slides. So you still have your ABAP extractors. You're using those extractors from ECC, mostly from ECC typically, or S4 in BW. You're capitalizing on the business content you've built. Any customization you've done in BW, you're able to bring it over. And the BW Bridge actually maintains some of the ABAP development you may have done as exits in BW, so you can still capitalize on them. So you don't lose all of this development. Obviously, one of the questions you need to ask yourself, and I'll come back to it later, is have you used best practices implementing your BW? Because if you've told yourself, I don't like working the way BW is set up, I like to bypass a lot of things with ABAP, I've seen that. Well, no guarantees you're going to get the results you want in this migration. Okay. Once you have BW Bridge integrated into Datasphere, so what this allows you is you bring in your BW information, your model, you still capitalize on those extractors, and you can slowly enhance it, excuse me, with your other spaces. You remember at the beginning, I talked about spaces. Spaces is a way Datasphere allows you to kind of organize your data warehouse or your data fabric, if I dare use that word. So if I just go quickly at Datasphere, so again, this is not training on how to do something in Datasphere. The objective today is more to discuss and kind of have you think of what your positioning should be around Datasphere and BW. But once you get into Datasphere, one of the things that is actually quite well organized is the whole notion of spaces. So you create those spaces, and each one of them is like an independent environment, almost, okay, to a certain extent. So you can create a space that's for finance, a space that's for HR, space that's for other departments, and you can really secure these environments. So if you're finance, you only see the tables, the views, the models, the data flows, the connections that are defined for your environment. So I go in one, for example, in this case, let's say I decide to go in a workshop. So we actually did a workshop in Chicago last week where we helped some of our customers get an understanding of how Datasphere works. So I gave them an access. Every single one of our customer who wanted to play with the tool and go in the workshop for that week, I enabled them to get into Datasphere, but they only saw that space. Everything we put in here, they were able to do it. We had some connections, we have tables. They were able to build everything up to the model that can then be consumed by SAC. So if I go in here, I'm able to say which users are able to access this space. If they're not here and they're not a system admin, obviously, they won't even see that space. So I put them in here. They were all able to connect, able to develop in here, everything else being hidden and unavailable to them. So that really allows you, from a security standpoint, makes it much easier, because you don't need to manage every single model. Okay, so I have to make sure these people don't have access. No, it's if they're finance, you put them in the finance space. If they're HR, you put them in the HR space. And afterwards, between spaces, they can share information. So you set up a space, and then slowly you say, okay, HR can share the final costs with the finance space. Finance imports it. It doesn't have the employees, but at least has a view that brings in all those costs. And they're able to go and pull it whenever they want, because HR has shared that space, that view on their data. So that allows a lot more flexibility between departments and subject areas. And why I'm talking about this is that BW Bridge actually works as a space. So you would create a space that you give it a name, so you can call it BW, obviously, or you can give it any other name you may want, and you just activate it. This connects to your BW area, and then as you move forward, you can start sharing that information with the other spaces. So it could be a starting point for your Datasphere environment. How does that work? Well, in my case, because it's quite new, I realized last month, too late for this webinar, that on our Datasphere, it's not enabled. I cannot create a BW bridge. So it's quite new. Any Datasphere environment is limited to one BW bridge. So if you have test and production, you will need two Datasphere environments to connect to each one of those, because you cannot have two different BW fully integrated, and I'll get back to this in a minute, with one Datasphere system. So if you want full migration to Datasphere, it's 1-to-1. At least that's how it is right now. Okay, so that's something to keep in mind. And to try to stay up to date on these things, I actually regularly look at on the Datasphere page. All the webinars are posted in the SAP community. You don't have to have a Datasphere environment to see that these posts are happening. You just go in the SAP community on the Datasphere area. But once in a while, I come and have a look at this. And today, I actually clicked on that one, how to plan and provision SAP BW. I'll get there. An SAP BW Bridge system landscape. And actually, I learned something new. And that's why I keep on reading those blogs that have come up, other people that have had experience implementing Datasphere and BW Bridge. In this case, what I realized that I did not know is today, if you cannot do a system refresh once you're BW Bridge. So I'm not exactly sure. I need to investigate. I read that just before the webinar, but that's something else to keep in mind. If you want to kind of integrate your BW and Datasphere, you won't be able to do system refreshes anymore. How much of an issue is that? I don't know. Depending on how you're managing your landscape, may not be an issue at all. Do your devs in dev, bring them up to production. Obviously, if you do a lot of stuff in production, that may become an issue going forward. So this is actually one of the things we'll discuss as we talk about what's the best move going forward with Datasphere versus BW. So how does that work? Well, typically, everything in your BW environment. So people who know BW, you have your data source, so connection to typically ECC. You have your transformations, a lot of business rules, some customer exits and everything. You have ADSOs, composite providers, so kind of views on top of it, and then BEX queries most of the time. And from those BEX queries, you're able to extract it, maybe use Analytics Cloud on them or other tools. So all of this goes into Datasphere BW Bridge. Keep it in mind. Looks easy this way. It also depends on your BW version up to what extent you're going to be able to do this. If you're BW4, what you're seeing here is entirely true. If you're not, it doesn't mean you're not able to use BW Bridge, but you will have some limitations. Let me get to that one on the next slide. So if you have BW and you've had it for years and it's still on any database other than SAP HANA, although it is true for SAP HANA, but you have an extra functionality with SAP HANA, you're still able to use BW Bridge. But what it's really going to do, it's going to take your model, really the final result, it's going to create remote tables in Datasphere. So you're going to be able to use these models as tables in Datasphere. At least you're going to be able to start integrating that data potentially with other spaces, as I mentioned just before. So at least you'll have your information there. All that investment you put into BW, you'll be able to use it. But obviously, if your plan is to get rid of BW, once you have those remote tables, you'll need to start building how to feed them without going through BW. So potentially look at the sources and rebuild it. So it's still going to be quite a bit of an effort, but at least you have that business layer. Actually, this is the data layer, if I use the right Datasphere word. So you have the data layer, you can create the business layer on top of it, and then gradually start migrating outside of BW, and the end users won't notice it. But still, a lot of work still needs to be done if in the end the objective is to get rid of BW, which may not be your objective, but just saying. Separately, if you have HANA behind your BW implementation, and there's a service pack to take care of, so do make sure to always read the notes or work with a partner who's used to them before you do that migration, to just to make sure this will work efficiently. So it does the same thing, bring your model, but at the same time, it's going to bring the HANA models behind your cubes, for example, directly in here. So a little bit more flexibility. It goes to the actual tables in the back. So it's gonna bring more, but it's gonna have more flexibility for you once you're on the Datasphere side. So a little bit more flexibility, but still, you'll still need to kind of standardize your business view on top of it and slowly see how you want to rebuild this if you want to get rid of BW at some point. Finally, if you're on BW4, so now the question is it worth it to migrate to BW4 if I'm going to Datasphere? Well, again, it depends how much intelligence you have in all of this, because BW4 on, so the latest BW, it's actually going to regenerate BW BEX queries. So it's going to capitalize on those in the business view. It's going to take your info providers, info objects, so those business objects that we spend so much time building in BW, these will be reproduced in the business layer. So you don't need to create that business layer. That kind of is the interface for the end users. Those were all going to be created based on the models we created, the BEX queries and everything. So all of this is going to be coming over, and you're going to be able to capitalize on this. Again, with the remote tables in the back, but you'll have all the layers already set up. A lot of the work you've invested in BW will be recreated pretty much automatically in your Datasphere environment. So this is going to bring potentially a lot of value for you, but again, you have to ask yourself, do I need everything that's in here? That's actually the reasoning I'm going to go through in the next few pages. So BW4, it really brings everything. So it brings BW queries as analytic models. It's going to bring in your BW security, data level, security into Datasphere as well. Support your hierarchies is going to bring a lot of this. And I mentioned earlier, there are limitations. The objective today, a lot of those limitations are really small items. Just do refer to the SAP note that kind of documents those as you go forward. Maybe those limitations are minimal for you, or maybe there's a major showstopper. So just do be careful and have a look at those limitations. Most of the basic good best practice developments in BW4 can now be easily migrated in Datasphere. But yes, there are always limitations you need to be aware of and have a look at if they apply to you. Once that's done, it's really gonna, if you know a bit your BW objects, so that's a PSA, and then you get your ADSOs and your info objects. All of this, we get remote tables, so that's all in the data layer. So you get all this set up with different views and analytic models in the data builder. And then with BW4, it also creates the dimensions in an analytic model on top of it that a user can use. So if you get a bit familiar with Datasphere, you'll know you don't absolutely need Business Builder. Business Builder, it's really an interface to make it simpler for a business user. And most of the time, our objective is for the business users to be comfortable, understand what they're using. So obviously, that's where Business Builder brings a lot of value. But if a lot of reporting is still a bit technical, maybe you want to focus on Data Builder first. Make sure all your views are okay, all your tables are set up appropriately. So maybe you don't even need that BW4 extra layer that is generated. Maybe you want to work with the Data Builder to start with. So these are really questions you need to ask yourself. And as mentioned, all your customer extensions that were done in ABAP, they are imported in BW Bridge. So you're able to capitalize on them, use them. You actually get an interface where you can modify some of those objects in BW Bridge. Wanted to show it, but as I showed, my instance of BW Bridge right now doesn't allow me to activate it. And yeah, no, I cannot go in a customer environment to show it. So this will have to wait for our next webinar. So, seeing all this, what should we do? Should I migrate? Is it going to be useful for me, or should I just wait until the next release? Or what really should I do? Or should I just ignore BW and start over? That actually could be the answer for some of you. So first of all, is BW bringing you value? So I talked to you earlier. This is the old layout. You know, it looks similar, although it's funny, all the pixels and everything are, we see that it was done in another timeline almost. You have business objects, you had your backs, and bring in data in with your data sources. You're trying to have your metadata. So today it's a catalog that's really improved. A lot of it required kind of an architected layer with stored data at every one of those levels. So for a performance perspective, so, and master data on the side. So I took that from current documentation on BW on the SAP website. So that still exists. And as I mentioned earlier, it's still the same strategy. But first thing you need to ask yourself, okay, even if that's there and done properly, what level of trust does your BW carry within the business? I've been with companies where everyone, when it comes from BW, they know it's valid information and they go forward with it. You need to balance it with BW all the time. So if your users trust the information in BW, yes, maybe it is worth it. I have customers though where no one trusts BW, everyone bypasses BW. In that context, is there really value in doing it? It's actually much faster to build things in Datasphere. So maybe the best solution would be to figure out, okay, maybe I need to think it through again, and maybe we should rebuild some of those things and figure out why it's not being used today and correct those issues. So if you feel you have the trust of your business users, are you able to say how many of your BEX reports are directly used every month? If some of them are only used for exports to Excel, and just look at them, if they have like 1,000 fields, you know they're not using them for analysis. They're exporting this to Excel. So that's not really the point. Okay, yes, some people need to export, but if all your reports are only there for Excel exports, BW is not bringing value. Is a shadow data mart world kind of existing? So have you heard of a SQL Server with Power BI that's separate? People get a BEX report, exports it, loads it in that SQL Server environment. Again, BW is not bringing a lot of value here. The idea is to make it easy for users to get information. If you need to export and load it elsewhere to analyze it, someone missed a point here. Validation. So if the only reason why they have this, people do a lot of exports from ERP, they trust the data in BW. but it's never the level of detail they need. So they just check the totals in BW and export everything from ERP. Something's missing again, so maybe it's not worth it. And automated broadcasts. So if you know, oh, I have hundreds of users, we send them reports every month. Be careful. How many of them are actually looking at them, or how many of them are getting classified in a folder in their inbox every month and they're not doing anything with them? So I've seen a lot of automated broadcasts where there are one or two people, they ask questions. So it seems very dynamic, but it's only that one or two person that's doing anything with it. So again, it's not bringing a lot of value for the rest of the company. As a BW admin, so as you maintain your BW, do you know what the reports are used for? So again, understanding what they're used for will help you understand the value your BW is bringing. If it's one of those above, maybe it is not bringing that much value. As your BW content evolved over the years, and the fact that it hasn't evolved is not something that's bad. If it's intensely used for finance or for sales, and people in sales and finance are using it a lot, that's actually a good sign. That means the investment was properly done. People found value in it and keep on using it. So if you have a lot of usage and it hasn't evolved a lot, probably means you found the sweet spot, and maybe that's a BW that's worthwhile to migrate. So that's a good question to ask yourself. And the last one, because BW is, I said it before, I love it. I love working with BW. But do you need data that is not in SAP? I know SAP has improved on this, but as you go to the cloud and everything, there's nothing better than a cloud solution to integrate with other cloud solutions. So do you need a lot of data that is not in SAP that you'd like to integrate with the data that's in BW? In which case, maybe you would have some value of bringing this to the cloud. Again, with the question, should I rebuild or use BW Bridge? The questions above should help you decide that. But also, it's not only about having the right data. Is it built according to best practices? Something else I kind of dug into old SAP documentations. Anyone who's been on the BW side of things, LSA and then LSA++. LSA++, can't remember if it came out with BW on HANA or BW4. It's been a while. Anyways, it's how you model your things from a source and then operational data store layer, corporate memory. No, I did that before BW4, but I don't remember the ++ when it came out. Anyways, so we organize all of this. You try to make sure you have all your detailed data in your BW, and then you customize the business rules, organize your data marts for your different data departments. So the detailed data won't end up looking the same for finance or for sales, but you still quite often need the same basic data. But ask yourself, if you oh, there's a word missing. If you need to change a business rule, how often can you just apply it in BW versus reloading everything? So is your operational data store or enterprise data warehouse propagation and harmonization layer pretty complete? If you need to reload everything, you know, we need a weekend downtime. You know, there's something missing. So probably you need to look into it. I'm not giving answers. And I forgot to say at the beginning, full disclaimer, everything I'm saying is my opinion on things. It's not SAP's position. So just be aware, you still need to look into why this is happening. But typically, if changing business rules requires a lot of work, a lot of reload, that probably means from a best practice architecture perspective, something is missing. So does your BW model contain all the basic information? And I just added that first one. It does not mean does your data warehouse have all the fields. The fields that are important for your business and all the fields are two completely different things. You need to understand what's in there. Is drill down or report to report interface to go to document level used? So if you're using that, potentially you have that data available, or maybe not. If you need a new report with fields you haven't seen in reports before, but you know they're important to the business, how quick does it come back? if it's next year, which I've seen, and or in some cases someday, a bit like ordering some electric cars these days, maybe you'll get it in a year or two. So if that's what's happening to you, again, maybe the data is not all in there. They need to rethink the architecture every time, or reload some data, create a new model because, well, the data wasn't there. We needed to create a new cube because this and that. We didn't want to touch the old one. So again, probably didn't follow best practices. So maybe there is a lot of rework required to make this efficient. So again, maybe keeping that BW is not the best move. Maybe rebuilding it on the side. Is space management driving the decision? Okay, so did we limit how much is in BW because of space costs? This used to be a big thing for on-premise systems for a while. Nowadays, it's still an issue, but still not as much as before. So what's the business need? So if you've restricted your BW design because of space management considerations, maybe it's time to rethink this and see how you want to get this organized. Datasphere integrates with some big data environments, so the bulk of your volume could be in a big data environment that does not cost as much as a pure Datasphere in-memory drive. So do you know what the value of the data you have? A bit similar question I had earlier. Do you regularly review your architecture as new developments come in? Were some mistakes made? Are we reviewing it, adjusting it? And who's doing those reviews? And I'm nothing against developers, but is the person reviewing it having a clear BI strategy in mind as he's reviewing it? Or is it only a developer? Yeah, it works, things flow in. So be careful, because reusability, flexibility, that's what you need to have in mind when you build a data warehouse. Has it been done? It's no point in bring this into Datasphere if it needs to be redone anyways. Transitioning to Datasphere could cost you even more if you bring in a BW that's already not properly designed, because you'll end up redesigning it anyway. So may as well start from scratch in your Datasphere and keep your BW alive while you're doing it. And same question I had earlier, you'll probably recognize it. Do you need data that does not reside in SAP to enhance your existing model? So maybe additional sources. Datasphere is much more flexible from that perspective. One last one, okay? Are you ready for the public cloud? And I've had that one. And I have a customer who probably will not go to Datasphere short term because they have an internal policy in their industry that they do not go to public cloud. Right now, Datasphere is only available as a public cloud solution. A lot of companies, doesn't matter. Actually, if we go a few years ago, people didn't want to go cloud. Now, most companies are on public cloud anyways. But if you can't, well, yes, Datasphere cannot be on your roadmap short term. But the question is, why does that policy exist? Because with technology evolving, policies can also evolve. That policy is it because of customer enhancements. S/4HANA Cloud, you can personalize it a bit more when it's private cloud. That does not apply to Datasphere. Do you need a server optimization? In SAC, I've had customers where their environment was really getting large, and the only way to optimize it is really to have a server dedicated for that customer. Again, Datasphere, you can increase your CPUs, your memory, and everything. So that's really not having an impact there. Is it a security/industry requirement? In this case, yes, maybe you'll be stuck waiting for private cloud. I don't know when/if this is coming. Right now, I have no information on it, but I know that for now, Datasphere is public cloud only. And is the reason you don't know, but that's a policy you were told? Maybe it's time to just figure out why that policy exists. Do you expect this policy to evolve? So should you just put Datasphere on the back burner while you see if private cloud is going to come, or work internally to see why is that public cloud policy there and try to make it evolve? And in some cases, is everything that's in BW affected by this policy? Maybe it's your HR information that is really affected by it. Maybe it's some financial information, but maybe there's a lot of details that you could bring in there that would help your business that is not affected by that policy. And that's something you could bring only that part through BW Bridge or as a new build. And again, do you need data that does not reside in SAP to enhance your existing model? That's the never-ending question. Datasphere makes that easy. So if you're able to capitalize on it with Datasphere, really integrating data from multiple sources, customizing business rules, it's so much simpler. But with all the baggage I mentioned, there's a lot of a history. Once you have this, where is your data today? Historically, BW, most of the data was here. And that's a question I kept on asking as I went through those different slides. BW, most of the data is here. Is that still the case? And do you feel going through best practices, value that your BW brings, is it worth it for you to bring your BW in Datasphere? If that's the case, even if you have SAP and other business apps, yes, could make sense. If you need to integrate it with other sources, big data sources, some streaming sources that are available nowadays, some virtual access. You don't need to bring everything in Datasphere. You can just have virtual tables that read other performing systems and you access it when required. You don't need to bring everything over into Datasphere. You can bring things from slower systems and virtually access things from more efficient systems. We get some an additional crowd to the webinar now. So yes, so once you have all this and you figured out what you want to get, maybe that's time to start thinking about that business data fabric layer talked about earlier, where BW is just part of it. And the BW Bridge helps you bring it within the data fabric layer, and then you can start integrating data. This is a big data environment you may have set up elsewhere. Same thing for unstructured. Maybe that was built, but you have BW, you have a big data system, you have a SQL, Oracle, SQL, whatever else database, you have some streaming coming from another system. All this can be integrated through Datasphere models, part of it stored, part of it virtually accessed. And this is actually the whole idea behind the business data fabric that SAP is bringing forward with Datasphere. And you can search it on Wikipedia, on everywhere. Business data fabric is a concept that is gaining a lot of again, another word I'm missing, but getting a lot of potential on the market. So obviously SAP is going for it, and Datasphere, the way it was set up, we already have quite a good solution for it. They're still working on it. If you knew about data intelligence, a lot of the data intelligence components are being integrated into Datasphere. So you don't need two systems. Datasphere is going to be your business data fabric. You can still maintain your data in all your different sources, BW being one of them if it brings value and you feel you're kind of organizing your data in a valuable way. In this context, BW is just an extra source in it. If you feel your BW is not trusted, is not flexible, does not have the data you need, maybe it's time just to start rebuilding it. You may realize that something that took you 2 years to build in BW will be done in 2 months, and then you can start from there. In some cases, that may be the best solution for you. If you want to understand a bit more how Datasphere works and the basics of it, I strongly encourage you. SAP has published a training on Open SAP that explains some of the basics I've quickly gone through today. They don't do BW Bridge in there, but they do talk a lot about other components, so you understand how the design works, and then you'll be able to make up your mind yourself. Is this easier? Yes, it is. One of the big advantages I find in building out in Datasphere is BW forced you to do everything before you could show one field in a report. Datasphere allows you to go piece by piece. Let's bring that table. Let's see, is the data fine? Let's open it in a report. Yes, it works. Let's add this dimension. Let's add these properties. You can add things slowly and work on the data layer, validate everything on the data layer, then do your business layer at the second step. All the way through this, you have your SAC report that can validate the data you're building. So it brings a lot of value, lots of flexibility, and depending, again, on all the items and some more you may think of, Maybe your BW investment is worth bringing over, or maybe it isn't. It's really a good question to ask. I hope I was able to give you some good insights as to what to look for, what to think through as you're going through those discussions. And please do not hesitate to contact us if you have additional questions, if you're still trying to figure it out, if you have some very specific questions to your environment that I haven't covered, but you're really wondering about, don't hesitate. Obviously, I tried to make this presentation cover as many scenarios as possible without going too much into detail, but there's obviously a lot more that we can talk. There's a lot of information in the roadmap in SAP notes that can help you understand a bit better what the next step should be for you. Thank you all for being here. As you're leaving, don't forget to read. Sorry, there's a poll at the end, and I'm seeing we have a few questions, so I'm just going to go very quickly. After full migration data from BW to BW Bridge Datasphere, can we switch off BW system? No, that's not the objective of BW Bridge. BW Bridge is to integrate your BW with Datasphere. It kind of sets up the initial layout, and then you could slowly remap the loading process to only use Datasphere. But initially, the loading process will go through BW landscape, so you still need that. Yes, process chains also can be maintained through the BW Bridge as well. So there are some functionalities there. So again, BW Bridge allows you to capitalize on what you have in BW and bring it to Datasphere. The idea, obviously, over time is to make it easier for you to see your whole landscape, what's in there, and start potentially unifying it if necessary. What was it? That needs so is it permanent or one time? So again, no, it's really you're integrating your BW of Datasphere. So as long as you don't remap the loading process behind the views that are generated, well, this is something you'll need to maintain, and your BW will still need to be available. Are ETL capabilities of Datasphere comparable to BW? So Datasphere seems to be mature, and most users consider as a sidecar to BW at this moment. What are your thoughts on this? With the new branding, Datasphere, a lot of new changes have been brought into Datasphere, and for a lot of my customers, I feel it can be a full data warehouse solution. But there are exceptions. There are things you do in your data warehouse that you may not want to keep on using. So in this context, maybe you still need BW, but right now I can say that for some of my customers, Datasphere is more than sufficient for their requirements. Some others where they built a lot of stuff, sometimes it's the legacy things that are just a challenge to bring over. It's not that Datasphere doesn't do it, is that you need to rethink how you're going to do it, and that's where most of the challenge is. But aside from that, Datasphere can do more than BW, a lot more. You have Python integrated in there. You can use R if you need to, SQL, which in BW was a bit of a pain to access. And with the BW Bridge, you have access to ABAP as well. So, and this is all part of the BTP environment, as I mentioned at the beginning. So, no, I do feel Datasphere is now ready to cover, I'll still say over 90% of what BW did. There are still exceptions. We could literally open a SAP note and list them, and some of them may be having an impact for you. So these were all the questions I had. Thank you all. Don't forget, please, to answer the poll as you exit. Don't hesitate to contact me if anything, or you can even do that QR code thing to get my contact information. And hope to see you soon, talk to you soon. And if not, well, have a great day. Thank you.